Hello, welcome to the Analyst at the Ashes with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
Bit chilly at the MCG. Look at you in your thick jacket, kind of waistcoaty thing. Wow, are you feeling the cold?
They're called a body warmer or gilet,
Yes.
Yoz. Well, it's supposed to be summer, isn't it? It's supposed to be summer, but it's actually been freezing cold in Melbourne. Not that people watching this back at home will care, because we're out in Australia and they're not. They're at home in the cold.
It's much colder at home, isn't
Yeah.
it? Now, I think that although this is pitched as the greatest sporting contest on earth, I think, and we're in the grounds of the MCG here, where when you arrive in the morning, there are quite a lot of sort of acrobats and stilt walkers and jugglers sort of performing. And actually, I felt today I was at the circus, or you could say a pantomime, because there was 20 wickets fell and no batter had any application. There were mad shots. At one point, 23 for 4, England were, and Harry Brook waltzed up the wicket to his first ball, tried to larrup Mitchell Starc back over his head for 6. And people were laughing. And it was almost like a pantomime crowd. It was either laughing and clapping and cheering or booing. There was not much in between. It was an absolutely manic, insane day. How do you think of it?
Do you want to talk about the Brook shot first, or do you want to talk about the day overall?
Well, I felt the Brook shot sort of encapsulated a mad day.
Yeah, I mean, I could understand to some extent why he played it, because England were under so much pressure, and it was a way of trying to put that pressure back on Australia, which kind of sums up their philosophy. Look, it looked utterly reckless, didn't it, first ball? And he actually did it later, didn't he? He did hit Starc.
And he did hit a good shot.
Yeah, it was a magnificent shot over mid-off. And actually, the bold facts will tell you, or the bald facts will tell you, that Harry Brook was the leading scorer today. He made 41. That was the leading scorer on a ridiculous day. What we should talk about, Yoz, is this pitch good enough for a test match in front of 90,000 people, a record crowd that turned up today? Is this the sort of pitch that you want to play test match cricket on, or was it not that bad?
Well, are we pitching ourselves here as cricket experts, or those two old blokes from the Muppets?
Well, Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah. Well, certainly one of our listeners pitched us as Statler and Waldorf. You can see that if you watch on YouTube. A nice little caricature that he created, actually. And
rather than Hinge and Bracket.
Much better. I slightly prefer Hinge and Bracket. They did say that you looked as if you'd had a hair transplant on this particular picture, but anyway.
I could do with one.
It was a good. It was so could I. It was a good little comparison, actually. And I don't know. I mean, there was a sort of element of the Muppets today out there, weren't it? Certainly, some of the batters looked like Muppets. The bowling was very good. I think there was, a lot of grass on the pitch. They said 10 millimetres of grass.
Most of the series.
For most of the series, you've had that.
No, it's the most in the series so far.
The most in the series. Sorry, I misheard you. The most in the series so far. Normally, a test pitch has sort of 6 to 7 millimetres of grass. In fact, when Stuart Broad took his 8 for 17 at Trent Bridge, it was 8 millimetres. So 10 is quite excessive. I didn't think it was unplayable, though. I thought the ball moved around, and the good seam bowlers got lateral movement, but Bryden Castle didn't seem to have a lot of problem playing him, and I think overall the bounce was fairly consistent. It wasn't dangerous. You just have to negotiate this sort of movement, and neither team really has any idea that the pitch was difficult, because it didn't last long enough. Hardly any batters stayed in. And one other thing about batting at the MCG. Now, I played a lot with Dean Jones, who was probably one of the most famous batsmen that Victoria have ever produced. He's the last player to have played more than 40 tests coming from Victoria. He played a lot here at the MCG. He always said, don't drive before lunch. And he abided by that rule. And there were a lot of players driving before lunch. 2 of them, very experienced, Marnus Labuschagne and Steve Smith. Labuschagne having a bit of a casual drive, caught in the slips, and then Steve Smith having a big waft and clean bowled. So I didn't think either of those balls did much. It was just bad shots and good bowling.
I don't think anyone is saying that the pitch was dangerous or anything like that, or unplayable.
Well, you were saying it was unsuitable for Test cricket.
Unsuitable for a match that you probably want to last a reasonable length of time. I mean, look, I quite like Test matches where there is something there for the bowlers, so you have that really good contest, and a good pass score is around about 280, 300, 320, something like that. That is, I think, is a good test pitch. Actually, Adelaide Oval, actually, we had 3 scores in the mid 350s, something like that, and I thought that was a really good pitch. And you're helped by the weather in Australia, of course, because you don't get many interruptions, do you? So you can play the full 5 days, something like that. I thought this one, I'm not so sure. I think there was probably too much movement. Or do you just think there's not enough patience among the batters?
No, you see, so this is our Betfair exchange today, actually. I think that you say, was the pitch unsuitable for Test cricket? I think the batting was unsuitable for Test cricket. That is the shortest England innings, and we've had a few recently, since 1904 by overs bowled. 29.5 is all they lasted. Australia were no better. In fact, in many ways, I think they batted worse. Some of their shots, I mean, Steve Smith, Labuschagne, for instance, terrible shots. Travis Head trying to cut one early on, dragged it on. The ball did a little bit, but it didn't do enough to suggest 20 wickets should fall. Why don't batsmen just stick in a bit? I know I've said this probably ad nauseum throughout this series, but batters aren't prepared to just stay in for a bit, leave a few. Whatever happened to the lead? No one leaves a ball. They just drive at the ball, almost willy-nilly. Lots of catches in the slips today, lots of good catches. The bowling was very good, apart from Cast. I thought, Josh Tongue stuck to a fuller length. In fact, I think his length, according to the stats, was the fullest length of any England bowler since records began. 5.8 metres he aimed from the stumps, which is quite a full driving length, inducing the drive, and all his 5 wickets were from full-length deliveries. Excellent. I thought Gus Atkinson supported him well, and obviously when the Australians bowled, Michael Neser, Scott Boland nagging away on a length, Stark as well. They give you very little. Good bowling, but pretty poor batting.
See, I thought, like you, I actually thought that in a strange way, Australia batted worse than England today. For that reason, is that they actually did toss away lots of their wickets. If you look at the highlights, and they'll be on TNT, if you look at the highlights, England were largely bowled out, by really good, relentless Australian bowling and a pitch that had some nipping. At times, bowling was really difficult to play because there was enough nip, and it was really challenging out there. And Stark again at the top of the order, got the ball in the right place and got his rewards, knocked off the top of the England innings. So the England. Brooke did play that outrageous shot, and Jacks actually came down the pitch and tried to play an outrageous shot. And I think
that was first ball.
Yeah, that was first ball. So, but both survived, and then they were bowled out, weren't they? Brooke got a good ball again. He was pinned LBW by a decent ball that nipped back in.
Yeah, but he's trying to work a ball that's straight through mid-wicket. Why don't you just play it straight?
Well, yeah, you could say that. But the point being, there was enough nip out there to really challenge the batters.
That's all right on the first day pitch. I mean, you can, just negotiate it.
Yeah.
All right, you're going to get a few good balls. Play solidly. Play with soft hands. Don't allow the ball to carry at the edge to slip, for instance. No, I don't agree. I think the batting, the bowling was good.
Yeah.
The pitch had a bit. But the batting was pretty awful.
Yeah, and look, it wasn't. But you said yourself that when Stuart Broad bowled Australia out at Trent Bridge, there was 8 mil on the pitch. Yeah. This had 10.
Yeah.
So that suggests that there's too much in favour of the bowlers. Surely.
No, because actually that pitch, 8 millimetres of grass pitch, actually didn't do that much. In fact, Broad, when he saw it, he said we should bat first. And I said, I think that's a nice pitch to bowl on.
Well, there you are.
And
then.
it was a nice pitch to bowl on. It was a nice pitch to bowl on, but it wasn't 60 all out. It was terrible batting, very good catching, steady bowling. Every time the ball did a little tiny bit, it got the edge, went to slip because it was bad batting. That was probably a 180 all out pitch. This today, I think, was a 200 pitch. And one team got 150 and one team got 110. Yeah. So they left about 100 runs out there. Well, okay. At least.
So
I don't mind a pitch which is 200 all out on the first day. That's okay. Because, you want a bit of encouragement for the bowlers on the first morning, maybe even the first afternoon. 200, 220 all out. It's not 140 all out.
No. Well,
150 all out.
I think didn't we both establish, or perhaps you didn't agree with me, that we think a good test match is where par is about 300. You're saying it's 200. So
I'm not saying I'm not saying par is 200. I'm saying that pitch did enough to bowl a team out for 220, which is, I don't mind that on the first day. But you should have a pitch which enables a 300 score at some point.
Yeah. Well, I think it did a lot. And I think the other aspect to it, of course, is that England are low on confidence, aren't they? So there are several players in their lineup who are, under par confidence-wise, form-wise. So that exacerbated it, and they probably saw a pitch like that and thought, well, this is the degree of difficulty high. But I didn't think my point is, I don't think England didn't fritter wickets away, toss wickets away. I mean, there were one or two. I mean, actually, Ben Stokes battled away. It wasn't a great shot that he got out to, but you've got to try to score as well. Bryden Cast was caught on the fine leg boundary, but England were kind of running out of wickets by then. I think they only had 2 left. But the rest, I thought, pretty much were got out by good balls, playing defensive shots. That's what I thought. And Jacob Bethel, and what it's a big old deal, isn't it, to come out bat number 3, your first Test match in the Ashes, in front of 90,000 people. The crowd, I mean, the noise as well. I mean, the noise when Australia took that first wicket and then gradually began to work their way to the top order. I mean, you in situations where you don't feel you're just playing against the bowlers, you've got the crowd right on top of you as well. What an experience of him coming out. England lost that early wicket. I mean, basically batting number 3 in the series for England, you're opening the batting, essentially, and he failed out for 1. Not particularly surprising when you think he hasn't had that much cricket this year, and the high level of challenge to come out from an inexperienced player in that situation, with start roaring in, and that relentlessness from the Australian bowlers, tough.
It's a magnificent stadium, isn't it? When you get it full like that. 93,446 people.
I think there were more than that by the end.
Right.
Yeah, they went over the 94,000 mark. So the highest crowd ever for a cricket match.
And it was... I loved watching, at one point there was a Mexican wave going round, and of course the Aussies were on top, so they got the Mexican wave going, and the Mexican wave went all the way around the ground until it stopped at the Barmy Army, and the Barmy Army of course kept their hands to their sides and didn't do any of the cheering, and there was a lot of booing from the crowd because they weren't keeping the Mexican wave going, understandably. So that was quite a funny encounter. And by the way, talking of the Barmy Army, we will show you at the end of this podcast, or you will be able to hear it, quite an interesting experience that I had yesterday, the Christmas lunch, the Barmy Army Christmas lunch in the Crown Casino, Melbourne's Crown Casino. 1,500 Barmy Army fans collected for Christmas lunch, and they were entertained, or perhaps their eardrums ruined by me playing the piano in front of all of them and singing the 12 Days of Christmas, which we rewrote the lyrics to. So you can hear a little bit of that and see a little bit of that at the end of this podcast. Actually, it was a tremendous performance by the Barmy Army to sustain the 12 Days of Christmas as they did without spilling any drink or falling over or anything. Actually, it was a really entertaining moment.
What were the 12 Days of Christmas? Because I've listened to that recording. It's not always obvious what the lyrics are.
Well, the final line is on the 12th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a number of different things, and it finishes with 2 ducat tons and a Stokes-led victory.
Who wrote those lyrics?
I was optimistic on the day.
Have you not been watching the series, Jos? Have you not been watching this series?
Well, you might get a Stokes-led victory somewhere. We've got 2 games to go. It could be this one. It could be Sydney. In fact, I mean, that's a good moment to just mention the Betfair odds for this game. When England had Australia 40-3 this morning, having put them in, the Betfair odds were kind of shading towards England. 62 Australia, 33 England.
That's not shading towards England.
That's the best we've had,
right,
pretty much in this series, 62-33. By the end, when England had conceded a lead of 42 and had put Australia back in for that 1 over.
Australia 105, England -5, no?
Scott Boland survived it. The biggest cheer of the day, wasn't it, when Scott Boland survived that final over, put in as night watchman. Anyway, by the end of the day, it's 79 Australia, 21 England.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel England will still have a chance here. If they bowl really well tomorrow, then they've got a chance. This podcast is sponsored by NordVPN. Now, as someone who analyses a lot of stats in cricket, as you do, Simon, I do dip around into different sites a lot of the time. And I've realised over time that my online privacy is not all that private. But with NordVPN, you can make it so, just with one click of the app, and you can change location. It's really easy. In fact, it's a game changer, isn't it?
It is. I use it all the time. In fact, I've just renewed my 2-year subscription. What I find is that if you're banking or whatever, it's great to have that security, that sense of security. Also, as well, if you're buying things, at Christmas or whatever, it's my daughter's birthday in a few days' time, and you want to go onto a UK website to buy something, you can put yourself in that country. So, for example, with a very well-known website that provides all sorts of goods and delivers them to your house, rather than be in a generic worldwide one, you can go onto the UK version and it goes straight to your account and put yourself in the UK. So that's what you can get with NordVPN. Excellent. Lots of other things as well.
Yeah, it's excellent. So it's worth trying a subscription, and there's a special offer if you click on this link, nordvpn.com/AIC, which stands for Analyst Inside Cricket, nordvpn.com AIC. That link will give you 4 extra months on a 2-year plan with no risk attached and a 30-day money-back guarantee. So it is worth looking at nordvpn.com/AIC.
So before the break, Yoz, you said England have still got a chance in this game. And actually, you look at the facts, 46 runs ahead, that's all. They're only 46 runs ahead, Australia, 10 wickets in hand. You think, yes, they have. But in theory, and they could bowl well tomorrow, and they could bowl Australia out, and they could chase down those runs. Another Test series, another place in the world, perhaps against different opposition, or even against Australia in the UK, you might say that was a possibility. You go into that second day, wouldn't you, really firmly believing. Do you think there's that belief in this England side that they can win from this position when you consider what's happened in the series so far?
Well, I don't think they're taking the field thinking they're not going to win. I still think they can believe they can win a test.
Is there enough confidence in the batting lineup there?
Duckett looks shot to pieces, and he's had a difficult week, hasn't he, with that social media clip circulating as well.
What did you think about that?
Well, I thought it was poor. I thought the image is poor of a player who looked as if he was in an inebriated state. He's got a bit of a track record. I don't like a lot of drinking. I don't have any problem with some drinking. But it was interesting, does drinking have an effect on a sportsman's performance? Undoubtedly, even if it's 3 or 4 days before. Quite interestingly, I spent quite a bit of time 20 years ago with the England rugby team before the 2003 World Cup, with the likes of Matt Dawson, Martin Johnson and others. I did some training sessions with them. I did some features with them. I interviewed them, a number of the players, Johnny Wilkinson, etc. And they stuck to a total abstinence diet for 11 months. They didn't drink at all. According to them, they didn't drink at all. 1 or 2 guys might have had the odd little kind of pint somewhere sort of behind the scenes, but overall, they didn't drink for 11 months. And they managed to win the World Cup didn't they, with that Johnny Wilkinson drop goal. But I thought that was, true dedication. And if you look at the real true athlete, Olympic athletes, again, the people I spent time with, the rowers that won gold in Sydney in 2000, Steve Redgrave, etc. Again, no alcohol, nothing. And there's no doubt, even if you drink something, a few pints 4 days before at a big event, it's going to have an effect. It affects your sleep, and it affects your, overall your sort of body functions and so on. So I think it's really dumb to get into a right state as he apparently has. Cricket is a lonely game, especially for batters who are struggling. I totally get that, but there are other ways to sort of overcome it, and one of those ways is to just be dedicated and try your best and be in the best state to perform, rather than lapsing into a sort of drinking culture which seems to have infiltrated the team.
Is cricket behind the times in terms of, you look at other sports? It's inconceivable, I would think, that as a professional, say, rugby player now, you could, drink in the lead up to a game because it's so intense. I don't know whether they do or not. My understanding is in football, again, because of the intensity, the physical demands on players, that there isn't that drinking culture that used to be. Because footballers used to drink the whole time, didn't they? Back in the day, and some legendary drinkers, if you want to describe it like that. But so is cricket a little bit behind the time? I mean, you wrote your book, a lot of hard yakka all those years ago. You know what it was like in county cricket.
We were amateurs basically, and
we were paid amateurs.
We weren't paid very much. I mean, I'm not saying that was the reason why there was a drinking kind of culture then, but it was sort of more excusable because there wasn't the expectation, there wasn't the returns, the income, there wasn't the pressure.
Or the scrutiny.
Exactly, or the scrutiny.
So this is interesting. What would a day be like? So you play a county championship day.
They even had pints available on the table at lunchtime at some grounds.
Well, remember,
Tetley's at Yorkshire, Lords. We had bottles of Watney's Pale Ale and stuff like that, which you could open if you wanted to, and most people didn't. But the odd person did. I mean, I remember Phil Edmonds, a very fine left-arm spinner for Middlesex, once saying, I've got a business client coming for lunch. Can you deliver a bottle of claret to the Lord's dressing room? Yeah. And they did, with two glasses. And we were looking, going, God, Henry's having a bottle of claret. I mean, it was sort of forgivable in those days. And at the end of the day, we had a dressing room attendant brought in. We had to request what drink we wanted at the end of the night, at the end of the day's play, and he brought in our alcoholic drink at the end of the day, and then we'd have a few pints afterwards. Not necessarily excessively, but you did have a few drinks afterwards, and I'm doubly sure it wasn't particularly good for you. I know I wasn't in the right state, to play the following morning some of the time because I'd drunk a bit too much. Not, inebriated, but I drank a bit too much. It affected my sleep. I was tired the next morning. Probably didn't bowl very well.
Remember Bumble told us on this podcast, David Lloyd, he said he batted through his first innings in Test cricket, I think it was, at Lords.
It was.
And he got through the morning session.
That's
and
right.
He thought he'd reward himself with a pint at lunchtime.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost inconceivable, that, isn't it? Now, that seems like a remarkable story in modern times.
Obviously, we are talking 40, 50 years ago.
He was out straight away, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was out immediately after. Yeah. I mean, we are talking, this is a different era, totally different era.
That was still a test match, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, but I think that it's gone in phases a bit since. I mean, certainly Owen Morgan's World Cup team early in that sort of phase, the sort of 2015, 2016, there was a bit of a drinking culture. I think after the Stokes incident in Bristol, that was sort of stamped out or kind of reduced a bit, and maybe it's resurfaced again because, drink and cricket do go together very well. I mean, for years when I played club cricket, you go into the bar afterwards and have a big night. And I often said if you lost, you drink the fixture back, to the opposition. Yeah. So it does sort of fit with the whole ethos of the game. But when you're at this level, at this professional level, England, with all the kind of rewards and the scrutiny that involved, you can't afford to do it.
So you think it's a complete no-no now? You think it should be teetotal?
No, I don't think it should be teetotal, but I think it should be, if you want to have a glass or two after the game, at the end of the match, fine.
So moderation once the game's done?
Yeah, maybe even a pint. In the hotel, quiet pint in the hotel after a day's play, maybe, but no more than that. There's got to be a limit, and surely these guys are, old enough and wise enough to realise that.
Has it been the reason England have lost this series?
No. The reason they've lost this series is they've just been inadequate. The planning, the preparation, the thought processes,
selection,
the decision making. Has all been pretty poor, and Australia have been better than perhaps people expected.
So what about this Test match then? 46 runs ahead, Australia, 4 days to go. I mean, imagine if it does end in 2 days, the losses. I mean, the colossal crowd here today. I understand there's another huge crowd coming tomorrow, huge crowd coming on the third day. Then it kind of tapers off a bit as the game goes on. Actually, bizarrely, as the game might get more fascinating, often Test matches get more fascinating towards the end. I mean, that's going to be a huge loss, isn't it, for Cricket Australia? They only had 2 days in Perth. They lost a lot of money out of that one. I mean, that's kind of, I suppose that's kind of my thought process behind, is this a good pitch for the occasion, really? That I started off with, that actually you don't want the flat pitch like we had in 2017, which was just awful. It was really boring. Such a boring game of cricket. And Australia batted out. They were well behind on first innings, but they batted out comfortably, and they never looked like losing the game. So it's not an exact science, isn't it, making a pitch?
I think that's a good point. You know, it isn't an exact science. And funnily enough, I was talking to Chris Rogers today, who's the coach of Victoria, former Australian opener, and we'll get him on this podcast perhaps tomorrow. And
better be quick.
Yeah. And he has been coach at Victoria for some years, also knows the ground, the MCG well, knows the groundsman well, the curator very well. And he said that he thinks, or the curator thinks, that they've got the drop-in pitches down to a fine art. Right. They know exactly what they're doing. But it does prove that it isn't an exact science, and it is a difficult balance to get it exactly right. You don't want it to be boring, a bore draw, but you don't want the bowlers to have too much. And I think if both teams had got through a bit more resourcefully today, well, say the first team, Australia, had batted a bit more resourcefully and maybe even bowled out for, I don't know, 240, something like that, then England could have gone in and been 20 for 1 overnight, say, or I don't know, 50 for 1, whatever. I think by the third day, the pitch will be good. So it just required a bit of better application, and by the third or fourth day, it would be a good match.
Okay, well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because if that's the case, then Australia might bat reasonably well tomorrow, and then perhaps batting in the final innings of the game for England might be more straightforward, and we'll see the pitch flatten out, and it'll be easier for batting, and England might still be in with a decent chance of chasing down whatever. I mean, there was that famous game here, the Centenary Test match, way back when in 1977, when we had the two first innings pretty similar to this. It was 138 and 95, and England were bowled out for 95, so almost identical situation in terms of first innings deficit, and then the second innings, both teams made over 400. Whether England would have the mental capacity to come out and chase big in the fourth innings, I'm not so sure, because they just look short of confidence. I think it was the combination of that. Australia bowled really well, and a decent attack for this surface. Like Nisa bowled well, and he was at you. Boland was nipping. He was at you. His home crowd. Stark did what he does. I mean, Jai Richardson back into the side was steady, but just feeling his way back in. They kind of hunted as a group, and there wasn't any release bowling from Australia, was there? Whereas I think, like you said, Cast, there was a bit of release bowling from England today, and it allowed us. But having said that, they still bowled them out for 152, and there were wickets tossed away, Cameron Green. But I just wonder whether, there is that mental fortitude there for England. The other thing as well, Yoz, do you think as well that this was kind of a bit more of an end of series batting a bit today? It's the fourth Test match. Australia won the series. They celebrated. I mean, talk about alcohol consumption. They definitely celebrated. Of course, you're allowed to do that if you're the winning side. They celebrated long and hard, as I understand it. Some of them anyway, harder than others. On whatever day it was, Sunday night possibly, and they were pretty ordinary today, weren't they? And England, in turn, rolled out. The series is done, and psychologically, I wonder where that seeps in.
Well, look, you have a perfectly reasonable point there. The sort of end of term, end of tour sort of feeling. It isn't quite the end, is it? There's another Test match after this. But I think there should be absolute ultimate motivation, particularly for Stokes and Root and some of the others.
To win a game here.
They have not won a Test match since 2011 in Australia. That is massive motivation.
But you can say it, and actually Ben Stokes did say it. He said these two matches are so important to us. We're determined to put up a show, and actually they did. Bowled them out for 152. There is that determination, but sometimes what you say and what you're able to do, to drag yourself to do, are two different things.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't have a response to that. I just hope they can, really guts it out, knuckle down. And obviously the bowling comes first tomorrow. If they bowl the same way as they did today, they might get the same rewards. Castle maybe have learnt a little bit. Stokes didn't bowl before lunch.
What do you think of that?
I thought he should have bowled. Yeah. I thought, I would next innings, tomorrow when England come out again, Tongue's got to open the bowling or Stokes. I don't want Castle opening the bowling. Because he just, every time he opens the bowling, he sprays it both sides, bowls short and full.
That
he just
sets
hasn't
the
got
tone.
there's no pressure from both ends.
But he's got to bowl at some point.
He has got to bowl at some point, but you want that pressure from both ends at the start. and make sure you're using those three main bowlers who are reliable, and Cast comes in as a fourth.
Do you think England picked the wrong
Yes,
side?
I think Potts should have played.
So they should have played an extra seamer,
Yeah.
because it's a 5-seamer pitch. And
No, I would have played Potts instead of Cast.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
I
Okay.
don't know why he hasn't had a chance, unless he's not bowling well. He, to me, would be like, I'd do a job like Nisa or Boland, just nag away, and that would have been a good chance to pick him. They seem to be really favouring Cast, and I just think he's a fantastic trier, but he's let England down too often in the recent past.
In the series?
In this series,
Yeah.
yeah. He just hasn't been consistent enough. Listen, let's not talk anymore in this sort of negative tone. Instead, I'll tell you what, we'll show you one of the key moments from today, a lovely moment, a moment that was on TNT Sports, who of course have the live rights to this series. And you can see TNT if you go to EE, Sky or Virgin Media, or of course you can also stream on Discovery Plus. The key wicket today, the big wicket today, was Steve Smith. 500s he's made at the MCG, loves it, averaging 78. And here is the moment when Josh Tongue produced a beautiful delivery. Didn't really do a lot, but just skated through that booming drive, which Dean Jones has always said you shouldn't do before lunch. And Steve Smith made that critical mistake. Big drive, tried to hit it too hard, missed it. Clean bowl. What a beautiful moment for Josh Tongue and for TNT Sports as well. Okay, so it hasn't been a great day for England again. They're conceding a lead of 42. They've got the chance to make amends. I think the one thing we should finish with tonight is the one thing we can do really well, and that is sing. We're very good.
I can't.
Well, no, you can't, and neither can
On the
I.
12th day of Christmas, my true love gets to
So
me.
I rewrote the words to the 12 Days of Christmas to try and kind of effect a revival by England. So some of these lyrics are a little bit, optimistic. Let's say things like 2 ducat tons would be one, I suppose. Another one would be 8 Jofra wickets, because he's not even here anymore. But I wrote them before we knew that Jofra Archer was leaving. But what the nice thing about it was that this 1,500 strong Barmy Army lunch group got into the spirit of this song, and along with the brilliant Simon Finch, who was of course on the trumpet, they really kind of got into the spirit of this, and they rose up and sat down again when it was their verse. So just have a little listen or watch to this, and that's what we'll finish with tonight. The excellent Barmy Army singing the 12 Days of Christmas, Yozza's version.